Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of craziness, and honestly, it's we'll end up seeing what's next, I guess. But
Yeah. But
anyway,
then we have things like this
yeah,
that are an absolute blessing. The
yeah,
whole work
exactly.
from home thing now, if it wasn't for that, yeah, I mean, where would we be with this virus? Be
Now,
even
and
worse.
I'll just say as we get started here, that's a great segue in because honestly, as far as that goes, in my opinion, this is something that we were already preparing for, and so a lot of what's happened with the world is almost secondary to what we've been prepared for. It-
Yeah, I feel like this is the EUC watershed moment,
yeah,
right? Like you said, we've been kind of like all doomsday preppers, waiting for this grandiose moment, and it's finally here. Now, what's going to be interesting is the after, right? After things get back to normal, do companies continue doing a lot from home? Letting workers work from home, whereas before they hadn't. And I think Sean Bass during the VMware EUC day, what was it, last week, the week before,
mm,
mentioned, there are a lot of companies that had sworn they'd never go to cloud are in the cloud now to get their workers working.
yeah,
So it's changed a lot in a very, very short amount of time.
it's true. I mean, it's and in the way we're working has changed too in some ways, but honestly, that's kind of why I wanted to do this. I actually conceived of this quite a while ago. Hey Trent, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Um, so yeah,
We
this was
love you,
something
Trent.
yeah, I wanted to do for a long time. The thing that's kind of cool about what's happening in the world right now is that this has kind of unlocked the validity of it. There's a lot of
Yep.
things that I've wanted to do as far as like virtual conferences, YouTube channel, live broadcast, having Zoom meetings on a regular basis with our peers, and all these kind of things. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but there was always, oh no, I'm busy. I got that going on. Well, now you ain't so busy, are you?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of crazy that this is actually becoming a a good excuse. And so yeah, so anyway, let me welcome everybody formally here. So this is a new initiative. Jeff and I have been talking since I think around January
Yeah.
about this concept
Yep.
and getting it out there. And so there's a couple of key components with this that we're wanting to get out there. First off, is we want the IT community, especially first off the EUC community or end user computing community, to really start to embrace more than just the technology. To and in fact, I want to say even going beyond just community. The problems I'm seeing is a lot of times people are just thinking of community as a place where you um, talk about tech stuff and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, there's so much more to it. There's so much more to growing your career. There's so much more to being a person in IT, not just a IT person. And so, um, the more Jeff and I talk, the more I realize that we're of kind of a similar mindset here. We want to see people grow. We want to see people thrive. And then one night at like 3 in the morning, I woke up and said, "Oh, I Thrive IT. That's the concept." And so that's what we're launching here. The hope is to go have these live discussions every week or so. Every week would be ideal. I think we'll probably try and do that. But additionally, we want to start having some interviews with folks and doing much more than just chatting, but actually start to nail out, okay, what is it about somebody's career that kind of sets that apart, or what made that kind of unique, and how can we follow a path of our own inspired by that? And so that really is the goal. So I'll kick things off because why not? I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about myself, and then we'll have Jeff say a little bit about himself, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions and uh, kind of do that. Our goal is to be here for like an hour or so. We'll kind of play it by ear, but probably not more than an hour. I've got stuff to do. So my name is DJ Eshelman. I am as you can see, no, hey, keep my directions straight that way. What? Up, up there, there. Need pointers. Like,
I
where
have
am I
no
going
idea
with
what
the
you're even
camera?
trying to point at.
uh, I recently put out a book called Be a Citrix Hero, talking about just some easy best practices, that sort of thing for Citrix. I've been in the technology world since roughly 96, in some capacity. I started off working for a internet service provider back in a tiny little town of Hastings, Nebraska, and so
I
I
thought you
got
were going to say
farmers internet.
Hastings, Michigan for a minute there. That's like
Yeah,
right down the road from me.
yeah. So there's a lot of interesting background there. That's when I first learned that I could teach people, which was in college at this little ISP. We had this little computer lab thing where people could learn how to use computers or just use the internet or whatever. We were actually Our first office was actually in a mall in Hastings. It was kind of crazy. So it was fun. Actually, the founder of that company actually went on to work for AOL. Did pretty well there. Um, got in just at the right time, actually. But after during Y2K, I was kind of recruited to help a friend of mine in Iowa. So I spent Y2K in a war room in Iowa. Now the thing about this is my degree was not in anything technology related. My degrees are actually in um, psychology and what they called religious studies, which that like religion, whatever. It's like not how to be religious, but the study of religions is a way to say that. It's like a philosophy kind of a thing. So that was just kind of I had leftover credits. So I was like, hey, that could be fun. Let me learn how to write a bunch of papers. And
That was actually one of my favorite classes was religious studies. We
mhm.
went through 4 different religions, doing the comparisons, the contrast,
Yep.
what each one. Yeah, I loved that class.
I tell you, just as an aside, I went to Hastings College, which is a liberal arts school, and there's a lot of reasons why I really endorse that style of education because I can speak to a lot of things. That's come in really handy. A lot of different perspectives, a lot of things I've had over the years, but that has come in handy recently as well, where I find myself addressing a worldwide audience, and I just never would have expected that would be something we'd be doing. But here we are. In fact, I was pulling up KDP. I might as well see if I can. Oh, I guess I don't want to do that, but yeah, it's probably too much disclosed there. But international sales have been a big part of it. There's more sales worldwide than just in America. Now, U.S. is still the biggest market, but yeah, it's kind of one of those things. So being able to speak to multiple different perspectives was actually really good. And so that's
Mhm.
actually one of the first things that I always want people to learn is that just because you don't have a formal education in information technology doesn't mean that you're not able to do it, or you don't have the way to adapt or whatever. So you can take your life experience into this and
Yep.
thrive. So Y2K in a war room in Iowa, servicing ocean vessels, which is really,
Oof.
really, really strange. So, yeah, there was a lot of concern that the systems were all going to fail, and the ships. We had actually ships that were being asked to dock. We're talking about big ocean tankers here, and so
Yeah.
the Coast Guard of various countries was asking them to just pull in and just anchor while the whole thing blew over. Well, a couple of them were kind of late coming in, so they were coming in just right as Y2K was happening, and so there's a lot of drama over that kind of stuff. But came back to my home in Colorado and immediately found that I didn't want to continue with psychology at all. I tried, but I found that the information technology was interesting, and that there was a lot of uh, people don't always remember this, but there was kind of a weird shift that happened in information technology right after Y2K. The two things that were really prevalent was one, you had a bunch of people that were now unemployed because they had been hired for these projects or whatever to help with the switch. Always makes me think of Office Space, but that's just me. But then you had another shift of companies realizing that the technology was actually pretty important to them. And so I went to work for Compact Computers as a kind of an advisory specialist for small to medium business vendors. And so they had a sell direct program that was actually, I don't want to get into all of the details about this, but it basically was part of Ingram, which is still one of the world's largest distributors of everything, including
Mm.
like my book. I mean, it's like a big deal. So they're everywhere, and Compaq owned a big chunk of that. So the way they were doing that is they had an independent program that was, for sales and stuff like that. And yeah, so it was an interesting way for me to learn that side of the things while also, being kind of that tech expert, which was hilarious because I wasn't a tech expert. I mean, I, I, I barely knew anything, but hey, there we are. So that's the next lesson is you don't have to be an expert to be an expert.
Nope. Well, and I think that's an important point is that, yeah, I mean, you are not we expect ourselves to know everything.
Sure.
The reality is no one else expects that.
Yeah.
You know,
Nothing.
and that's hard. That's a hard lesson to learn, I think, as a technologist, is that you don't need to know everything. So
Exactly. I mean, it's something where you need to know enough, but you don't need
and
to
you
know
need to
everything.
be able to know when to say, I don't know.
Yeah, and actually, I'll also say that the other thing that I've noticed is, well, actually, it was a lesson from college. Actually, there was a college professor I have that I had that said, your job is not to learn everything about psychology. Your job is to learn how to learn while you're here.
Yep.
And you know what? He was absolutely right. That was the most valuable lesson is learning how to learn. Um, so I actually threw myself into the fire right after that, actually. So got a, I started independent consulting just very shortly after working with Compaq. So I started doing all sorts of things. We called it uh, just in time technology. So it was a JIT tech. And so this was before the just in time compiler and all that kind of stuff was really happening. The concept was that, remember the show Powerpuff Girls?
Oh yeah, that was a great show. The
It
original.
was. It
Yeah.
was. And so there's that line from the 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 intro is like, here they come just in time. So for some reason, my the one of the guys I was helping out with at Y2K, he he joked around that, you're always there, just like right in time. And I'm like, oh, just like the Powerpuff Girls, just in time. So I owe a part of my history in IT to the Powerpuff Girls. But yeah,
Wow.
that was the concept, is that I could just be available, and that started a long string of weird ideas that I've had over the years of being that guy that just jumps on a plane and goes to help people.
Yep.
And that's pretty much exactly what I started doing is doing that. Um, dabbled at web design for a while, and that went well. But then I actually got exposure to real kind of IT projects with a how do I describe this best? I would say using well, no, I won't go down that road. What I'll say is that I moved up to Fort Collins, Colorado, and found myself kind of in this weird space where I was just going to ocean vessels and all this kind of stuff. So I was getting used to being on the road. And then I started working with a company that sent me all over the place, all over the country. You remember Kinko's, now FedEx
Oh yeah.
US.
Yep.
And so those little credit card systems that were there for the copiers and the PCs,
Oh yeah.
um, I installed well over 1,000 of those at you know something like 300-400 branches across the entire US. And so I had entire regions that I was responsible for. And so I built myself up through that project cycle of, starting out as the guy that was just went in to drill holes in desks and put things in place, to be the one that was actually leading the project. And I had somebody working for me doing that now. So it was a progression with that. It was kind of fun as far as learning how to make things more efficient, and that really caught on with me. And so actually I was popular and unpopular for a while there. I mean, I was popular with the management because I pointed out some things they could do in their process that would eliminate an entire position and make the whole thing more efficient. Which of course really made some people pretty mad at me, because they had a pretty sweet gig. They'd fly into some place and then just basically work for 2 hours and get paid for 10. So
Nice.
they weren't too pleased with me, but it taught me something about how to speak management's language and understand their needs. And there were some rewards for that. I mean, I was the one that was sent to Hawaii to do the branches there. So, that was kind of cool
Yeah.
to get that little bonus.
Free trip to Hawaii. That's
Yeah.
never a bad thing.
Yeah. I missed out on the one for Alaska. That was the other one I was looking forward
Oof.
to. But nonetheless, that was several years of my life, and that was when I flew actually probably the most, because especially towards the end there, I would fly into a city, um, install the system, fly to another city, install the system, fly to another city, or drive. There
Mhm.
was a lot of travel involved. That was right around Y2K as well, so that was a huge
That
impact
was
for me. In
kind of
fact, I was
pre-GPS,
yes, exactly.
semi pre-GPS MapQuest printouts.
Yep, of course, that's exactly what. In fact, this is hilarious. I was unpacking some boxes when I was moving into my house here, and I actually found MapQuest printouts from Idaho, Washington, and Hawaii. I don't know why I had them, but there they were.
Yeah.
I guess that was the nice thing about working at a Kinko's. It was pretty easy to print those off, but
Yeah.
that's
Those,
the issue.
yeah,
But
I don't even know how we got by with MapQuest while we're driving, trying
while
to
we're
read
driving, yep,
a piece of paper and figure out where we are.
in a rental car, and
Yep.
yeah, so
Yep.
that solidified a lot of things for me as far as the travel, but it also kind of wore me out a little bit. I had a failed engagement during that whole time frame, and all sorts of drama as far as that goes. To reconnect with friends and things like that. So, um, yeah, it made it so that I really needed to take some time and just be at home more. And so that's actually when I discovered Citrix, is working with a company that um, had a lot of law offices and things like that. And this was around 2003, 2004. And this, they needed somebody who knew Citrix. And the guy who knew Citrix was overworked. And he's like, I need you to learn this. I need you to learn this and take this stuff on. I'm like, hey, fun. Yeah, why not? Just learned Active Directory. So, I should be able to do anything. Exchange. Yeah, I know that. Yeah. Citrix. No problem.
Now the question is, are you appreciative to the guy for introducing you to this world, or are you like, God, why did I do that? I agreed to do that.
No, very much so. It was kind of funny that it stuck with me, and he moved on. He went to work for uh, well, eventually, I guess you could say Dell. Um, Various acquisitions along the way, but he got kind of away from end user computing and ended up at Dell by way of acquisition. But I stuck with it. uh, it became to the point where next thing you know, Citrix is all I'm doing. In fact, I was hired by a company to be their Citrix guy to do their stuff. We called it a manager of advanced technologies, because sometimes when you have employee sponsored healthcare, you need a certain level of people that are called manager. And so I was a manager of one, me. But that was another great experience. That's where I really learned the technology, truly. Even though I had small clients, I still had I think at my peak, I think I had 13 Citrix environments that I was managing at one time.
Mhm.
And so when the air conditioners went out in the data center, or data center being a closet typically, I was the one that got paged in 2 in the morning to go deal with it. And so, yeah, there was a lot of learning of not just the technology, but how work works in the real world, and all this kind of stuff. And so from that, actually decided to move on and start taking some risks, and took a contract up in the Chicago area.
Hmm.
And so my wife and I moved from Colorado to Chicago, just outside of Chicago anyway. And that was one of those crazy, risky things. I mean, we had just gotten married. Um, we'd only been married about a year when we moved out there. And it's a pivotal point in my career, because that was obviously pretty risky. And the risk ended up being just that, very, very risky. I mean, I the contract was not renewed, and so I was only there like 6 months, and now all of a sudden I'm like, oh well, gosh, what am I going to do? Find another job, or what's the next plan? So yeah, that became really interesting, as far as what to do next, kind of things. And so what ended up happening is I started applying at a lot of jobs, and somehow a company contacted me and said, hey, we need somebody to go work with Citrix. And I was like, I thought they meant like, what I do with Citrix. I was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And so next thing you know, I'm getting a call from somebody at Citrix, you know, uh, asking me a bunch of questions. I'm trying to remember who that was. If it was Phil or something like that, but I can't remember. I honestly don't remember who the conversation was with. But um, what got me the job with Citrix Consulting was not what I knew about Citrix. In fact, I didn't even really get any real questions about that. What got me the job at Citrix Consulting, or that gig, can't say jobs. I didn't work formally for Citrix. This was a contract kind of a thing. I was
Mhm.
out on the virtual bench before they called it a virtual bench. Um, but what got me that position was actually what I knew about Active Directory and storage. So learning along the way all these little things, all this kind of portfolio of knowledge, and how it all worked together, was actually what put me on a fast track for my career. And so next thing you know, I'm flying down to Florida, and here to Nashville, uh,
Yeah.
Memphis, and then things really took off. They asked me to be part of their residency program, which is basically every quarter they would make you just kind of exclusive, so you were just available for them to guide projects, to help teach their consultants, to actually be the one going on site, making all the documents, all that kind of stuff. And so I had to learn, like, kind of through the drinking through the fire hose, as far as as that went. It was really much more of like, I don't know how to describe the best way to say it, except for to say that there's a lot of things I knew about the technology, and now I had to learn a lot of the soft skills,
Yep.
and that was awesome to learn that, and to start developing my own kind of methodology. Um, which is it time for a shameless plug? I think it might be time for a shameless plug.
Do it.
Um,
Do it.
so here is the next book I'm working on. It's coming back from the editors. I'm going to be sending some people some advanced copies to start reading and proofreading. So that's a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to getting that. But that all came from those years of developing that, and then started working with companies as their chief architect, or uh, as a director of technology kind of roles. And make a long story short, that's where we're at with our career now. Is or we, the royal we, that's where I'm at. Is instead of just being the person that is um, exclusive to one thing, or
Yep.
consulting or whatever. Now that everything's coming together, and I'm trying to bring all of that knowledge into what we're doing. So I just realized I have this like control. I could have been doing this the whole time, and just making this a more interesting kind of viewpoint. And so anyway, that's about me. Here, let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about Jeff. and what you're up to.
Oh, look at that. Now I'm the big one. So, it's interesting because I look at you, DJ, and I see a young guy. But really, I started just a few years before you, working IT. The funny thing is, when I started, IT people, for whatever reason, came from accounting, accounting department.
Yes. Actually, my first IT jobs were part of the accounting department. You are absolutely correct.
Yeah, it was the weirdest thing, but there was something about accounting people and computers that matched. And like everyone that I had kind of grown up working with, like in those early to mid 90s, it was like everybody started out in the accounting, and the company needed somebody to start learning this stuff and doing it, and that's how it came out to be. So my first real job was working for the small, actually, he sold accounting software, and it was at the time that, again, networks weren't everywhere. Right. In fact, most companies didn't even have networked computers. They didn't necessarily even have computers at the time. So basically, I ended up being a jack of all trades, and I would be wiring places, typically with 10 base T. That is fun.
Yeah.
Coax, you got to, in it. Oh God, yeah. I'd have to, do the whole thing, snip it, crimp them, and pray they work. Actually,
that was my first, one of the first things I had to do with these ocean vessels was network them. And you talk about praying if they work, having to go through firewalls or going around firewalls and all those bulkheads.
Yep. And you're talking about real firewalls, not like we have in tech today.
And like steel that's that thick. Yes.
Yeah. No, I didn't have to do anything quite like that. But yeah, because a lot of these places weren't designed for wiring like putting in wiring afterwards. And yeah, so we had to get creative in how we would string together, a lot of these computers and stuff. And then what gets really interesting, I think, to me is my second job was working for a local hospital here in Grand Rapids. They've exploded since then. But when I first started, this was still Novell days. Windows Server was, I think they were at NT4. I don't know, NT351, NT4 time frame. But everybody was still mainly Novell for the file services.
I was just going to ask if you were like me and you kind of cut your teeth on Novell.
I did. I was I don't know if I ever got my CNE or whatever it was, the high end one. I was definitely a CNA and on my way to a CNE. But yeah, Novell was rock solid. I mean, it compared to Windows at the time, not even terrible. It was. I mean, you could leave a Novell server running. I mean, literally, I'd seen some uptimes of years, and we're talking again 90s. But our server room, our data center, if you will, was simply an old patient room with part of the wall taken out and a giant air conditioner put in there. And literally our networking equipment was in the closet that was still in the patient room that we used. We had 2 racks, 2 sets of racks, maybe like 5 on each side, but I mean, we didn't even use all of it. And best of all, we were Token Ring.
Oh, good Lord. Yes. Oh,
And that was my first true experience with working, and somebody's going to take offense to this, and I don't care, but working with networking people and it's not our problem. Well, I've got a beacon. I've got something beaconing. No, that's not our problem, man.
no.
Well, why is it beaconing? I don't know, but it's not our problem. It's like, so yeah, so that was fun. That was fun. Token ring, loved it. Not.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in volatile environments. People don't realize how much interference and stuff like that was caused in just medical equipment and things like that would just cause the entire network to go down when they somebody flipped a switch and everything goes off. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think what was really interesting was like before I left, there started an initiative to put in a wireless system. Again, mid 90s. These weren't what we have today. I mean, these were like, actual radios and stuff like that. The interesting thing was they were really trying to get it into the emergency, just like we have today with the carts and everything. The problem was that the hospital had changed around the ER rooms, the ER areas, where the x-rays were taken, things like that. So there were a ton of lead-lined walls that nobody necessarily knew were lead-lined because, it had changed so much. So that was a real interesting experience. I didn't do the implementation. We had a third party come in to help. They would think they'd have it, and then we'd get the testing going and find out that in this room there is a huge blackout. You can't access it whatsoever. That was kind of a fun thing. It was fun from my perspective because I didn't have to deal with it. But it was just interesting to watch, how things that you never would have really thought of at the time, when you were making these changes, to various sections of a company, in this case, a hospital, how that would affect down the road, not taking out the lead-lined walls and stuff like that. So,
actually, that's a great point. So there's a lot of, and in fact, you talked about that in your last video. And I think that was a really astute kind of thing, is that when it comes to what we now know as change control and things like that, this was not born out of some sort of like mandate that came from high and it was just, we knew about this to begin with. This came from pain, like real like pain and risk to persons and patients and things like that. I mean, a lot of these things come from really serious stuff that the kids today just don't know about.
Get off my lawn. Yeah, and that's one of the other interesting things was that because the ER was so critical, I mean, obviously, they actually had their own little compact server in the ER area, and if that thing ever went down, or it was all hands on deck, type of thing. Whoever could get there first got there and did it. Did whatever needed to be done. And I will say, I saw some interesting sights going through that ER at times. So that was always an interesting thing. So
yeah, truly. I mean, it's kind of fun that you, well, you're mirroring a lot of people's experience, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of comments, thumbs ups, and that sort of thing about just that of saying, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I went through as well."
Yeah,
a lot of us had to figure out the hard way that just the way processes needed to be, and it took a long time for us to be able to be kind of more proactive with that kind of stuff. But I think interesting,
we didn't really have change management at that time, like you were saying.
No. And we don't have to be generalists is the other thing you were saying. Whoever got there first kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no specialist really.
Yeah, there wasn't. We had to know a little bit of everything. It wasn't just we had to know Novell and the hardware. We had to know our own networking in the data center. We had to know, all that different stuff to be able to be effective. But on the same token, unlike today, we also had the resources we needed to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's because today, obviously, everyone's trying to do more with less and that whole good thing. And, we didn't have automated processes. We didn't have not SCCM. Its original incarnation, I can't remember the name of it. It was 1.0 for delivering packages, applications.
Yeah, wasn't it just called SMS or something like that? It was like a
SMS. I worked with SMS 1.0 and implemented it, and it did help us, but that was the best we had. There wasn't a lot of scripting or anything except batch files for login scripts. We didn't have all the tools we had today. But again, we also didn't have the volume of PCs, servers, those types of things.
Yeah.
One of the things I will say, I do want to, because I think it's funny as anything. Talk about learning, right? I mean, we had we used MS Mail to begin with. MS Mail, God, I'm old. And they released Exchange. Yeah, a file share, a client talking to a file share is all it was. But we brought in Exchange when it was first came out, and we did have one person kind of be the lead with Exchange, which it really needed it. I mean, that's a big enough beast, and doing conversions. Well, at one point, something went wrong with the Exchange server. Or no, she had to take it down for like some emergency maintenance or something. And it goes down. She gets the stuff done, comes back up. She sends an email to everybody saying the Exchange server is back up. About 20 minutes after that's done, we're getting calls about when is the server going to be back up? And so we asked her, said, are you done? And it's like, well, yeah, I sent out an email. You mean the email server you told everybody to disconnect from? It's like, no, they didn't get the message. and I make fun of that. You have to realize I've done dumber stuff than that.
Well, and it's not like we're immune from this. I mean, this is something. Let me give you an example. So yesterday at the CUGC virtual meetup for Nashville and Atlanta, my presentation, one of the points I brought up was that, look, if we're not communicating well with users before, now they're all working from home. If we don't have good means of communication, if the system is expected to be down and they didn't know about it and they go to get on the system and it's down, you can't say, well, we sent you an email. There has to be more advanced ways of doing that. And I'm not saying I have the answers, but that's one of those lessons that, we maybe haven't learned as well as we needed to.
Well, and it's interesting because, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, is that when we first started, it wasn't necessarily about the user. I mean, that's obviously it was because we were enabling them to do their jobs, but when push came to shove, if we needed to take something down, we'd just take it down. There wasn't, like I said, there was no change management. It's just, things happened. We needed to get some, obviously not the ER in this case, but, if something had to happen, we did it. We didn't necessarily take the user into consideration.
Right. Yeah.
And I think
that's out of the accounting department,
Yeah. And I think that's a huge change that even today I see people struggling with, is that it is about the user. You have to take them into effect now. I mean, it's what we do is too intertwined with the companies now, that if you don't take the user into consideration, the user experience, we all talk about it, but I still see people they say the words, but they don't do it. Actions speak louder than words, and it still happens. And it's not just us old guys; it's the young people coming up as well. That
absolutely,
because that's kind of the mindset we have as technologists for whatever reason. That hey, we know better than those end users. What do they know? But unfortunately, they're the ones really making the money for the company and keeping us in business.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and just nod your head and be a yes man to them every moment. But the user experience is imperative in deploying, upgrading technology, whatever it is you're going to do.
Agreed.
So absolutely.
And I think another aspect of that too that's really important is that even within computing and IT in general, systems that were not thought of as being user centric at all, that has totally changed. And and we have things like Facebook to thank for this, and from like an e-commerce perspective, places like Amazon, experiences like YouTube, where experience drives everything now. And so even in data driven kind of stuff, the question is always, what kind of experience is the user getting? Is this fast for the user? And I think that's amazing that we've gotten to that point where it's no longer just about, I just want to run this as cheap as I can. It really is, what is this going to do for our users? And again, current challenge, where we're having to kind of make compromises on some of that stuff. But yeah, it's a great point that's been evolving over the years.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Is that we do have to come to compromises, whereas before we'd be more unwilling to compromise with the end users. Yeah, now we have to, absolutely. So after the hospital, I kind of got into the consulting gig, just in the Grand Rapids area. What's that?
What year was that you started independent consulting?
Not independent.
Oh, okay.
No, this was my first consulting gig for a company called Breakwater Consulting in Grand Rapids here, and we covered West Michigan. And that's where I really started getting into the Citrix products. Got into WinFrame to begin with, moved up into the NT4 terminal services, MetaFrame, and they had like 100 products all built around MetaFrame, VideoFrame, all this different stuff. And it's really what got me going, down this road. As part of that, obviously I'm learning a new technology, and a technology that's still pretty young. There weren't any true experts, really, especially in the Grand Rapids area. And that's where I got involved in the Citrix forums, of all things.
Yeah.
And that's one pivotal moment, is getting involved in the Citrix forums, because that's where I met three very important people in my career. Thomas Kutzing, Stefan Vermeulen. I don't know what happened to Stefan. He was the printer guy at the time. And then his last name is Alex Cooper. We all know him from E2EVC, which is a great grassroots conference that he has built up. But we were, it was all still pretty new. So I started getting really involved. And as I would learn, I would help others in the forums answering questions. And they had this point system at the time. And Thomas, Stefan, and I don't remember if Alex quite made it, but we were the brains. That was the icon you would get at the very highest level, was the brain. And that was a great, I loved that.
Early gamification.
What's that?
It was early gamification kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And it was a contest because they had like the top 10. And I remember myself going up that ladder. But the big pivotal moment was not so much what we were doing on the forums. It was because, we started communicating outside of the forums and whatnot. Alex was putting together a pub forum, and pub forum was very small. I mean, at the time, it was just, really, I mean, maybe less than 10 people, maybe more. I don't know, but it was small at the time and whatnot. He invited me out, to fly out. It was going to be in Paris. And I said, what the hell? Let's do it. Found the cheapest tickets I could. I think it was like $400 there and back, which was incredible, I thought. And I always love to say this. I spent the weekend in Paris. Just flew out for the weekend. You know how it is. But that's where I first met Brian Madden. It's where I first met a lot of the European side of things.
Sure.
Brian was also his first time. We were the first two Americans to do the pub forum. And really from there, a lot of the community started to coalesce. That's not to take anything away from Steve Greenberg, Joe Schonk, and them, because they were very much involved as well on their side of things.
Well, let me pause for just a second here. Because I think there was a pivotal kind of learning question moment here, and that is your experience to this point, as far as what you're doing with Citrix. I mean, were you known for your deployments of that? Were you known for, helping thousands of people with their Citrix environments, that sort of thing? Was that what you were really known for?
No, because my job was just here local in Grand Rapids.
Exactly.
It was the forum piece.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I really want people to hear, is that it's not an achievement thing. It's not, it's not necessarily even what it's what you're willing to contribute.
Yes.
And that's a really big key. So I wanted to kind of key in on that, is that, it's not like you were invited to go, hang out in Paris, a weekend in Paris, because of what you'd done with your career. It's what you did outside of that kind of was as a added kind of a thing. For the longest time, I'll confess something. For the longest time, I thought the only way to get into the CTP program was to have points enough on that forum. And I always felt I just didn't have the time to actually do that. So little confession of mine that I thought that's how you got awarded that. So I just, didn't cry for a long time.
See, there is probably a bit of truth to that. But we're talking when we were first put together as a group of CTPs, but not everyone was doing forums. I mean, you look at Ron Oglesby, you look at, Sean Bass and them, they weren't necessarily involved in the forums. Ron had written some books. Sean was just a great resource all the way around. So you have these different people. So it was, but from my perspective, it was, I will confess, it wasn't all about just giving back. I wanted that brain and I wanted to catch up. When you start going, right, it is like a game where you're just, oh man, I got to be number one. Got to get up there. But being able to go out there and meet these people, and one, put faces to the names, all that good stuff. Sure. And a lot of us are still very, very good friends to this day. It's absolutely crazy, but these are people that, I can say I've known for 20, 25 years. And we are, still maybe not best friends, but still very good friends.
Yeah. Yeah. When you
Yeah.
can go to an event, and this is actually something that I really do miss. It pains me that Synergy isn't happening this year. Not, and the funny thing
Yeah.
is, I wasn't even gonna go at first, and I'm like, no, I need to just go, even if I'm not in there, just to be, hanging around and being with people.
Yeah.
It's those relationships.
Yep.
That's what really kind of matters, is that we are constantly building these things and doing these things that are relationship driven. Um,
Yep.
and like you said, are we, barbecuing with each other every weekend? Are we that close or whatever? Not necessarily, but it's great to have these relationships. And so what I'm hearing out of this is that, number one, it wasn't necessarily your expertise; it was your willingness to serve. Two, it was relationships that really mattered. So,
Yep.
I guess my next question is, what was next? What was the next thing out of your career that drove things forward?
So the next thing, it was, kind of, it was a lot of the expanding of the relationships, but probably the CTP program, being one of the original people in the CTP program, helping to drive that, whether it was behind the scenes or in front. It was very interesting when that happened, because it was at the first Bri Forum. I was a speaker at Bri Forum, kind of whet my appetite for that type of thing. But it was just, yeah, being part of that. And then right after that, I got nominated and into the Microsoft MVP program for terminal services. And then started getting me on the road to doing, I guess, more outside of Grand Rapids. Started working for a little bigger companies, a little more reach, Midwest versus West Michigan. And then there came a pivotal point where I decided I was going to go independent. And I was independent for about 5 years. I don't remember. I think it was 2005 when I went independent. And I was doing things like Brian Madden's masterclass training,
Sure. Yeah.
things like that. I did it everywhere, like a lot in the US, did some over in Europe. So that was kind of the next step. And then kind of I hate saying it, but the bottom kind of fell out with the Great Recession. And then went to work for some other companies. The big turning point, though, and this is interesting because I'm seeing this come up for whatever reason a lot in Twitter, is people asking, have you felt burnt out? Have you thought about a career change? Not me specifically, but, people asking other people, like, what has been your experience? Because I'm kind of thinking. And, I had always been on, probably use a term that someone's going to get upset with, kind of the grunt work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would do design, I would do architecture, but in the end, I would also be doing the implementations. So, always had that, what I say is deep technical, flip the switch here, don't flip the switch there to get better performance, things like that. I had that stuff down, but I was getting sick of it. And I, at that time around 2011, I was actually working for AppSense at the time. Just kind of like you were, flying everywhere every week and doing implementations. And, I was just tired of it. I was tired of tech. I was tired of doing implementations, just day in and day out. And then, and I've made this public so many times, I get a call from Ron Oglesby saying, hey, I'm working for this little company. We've got this thing called app layering. Would you be interested? And that is the pivotal moment, because when I took that on, Initially, it was, I mean, we called ourselves solution architects, but when I first started, I was, as he would say, the demo monkey. I was doing straight sales engineers, demos over Zoom, GoToMeeting. We were pretty early, actually, with the whole Zoom thing at Unidesk. But it brought me to a very different side of the tech world. Doing the sales
thing. Yeah, exactly.
The sales pitches, doing, eventually leading into, writing out white papers, doing some of the blogs, making some of those videos that showed how to do different things in Citrix or Unidesk. And then the speaking at user groups, speaking at conferences, I mean, all this stuff. And I, like you, developed those soft skills that I had never considered all that important. And now I look back on and it's like, man, what an idiot I was, because if I had had these skills earlier, who knows, what my career, could have been much different. Who knows, but so I consider that actually very much a career change. Yes, I'm still in technology. Yes, I'm still in EUC,
right,
but I'm in a whole different side of that. And it feels like a whole career change. So really, I've got Ron to thank for that. Rob Zalowski. I feel like I'm doing an awards acceptance speech. I'd like to thank these people for, and the whole Unidesk team. Unidesk has been was a great experience from a work perspective. But yeah, I mean, I even got to manage our team as Ron was moving up and doing some other stuff. I got to manage the solution architect team. I got to see the good and bad side of management. But it was it was the best experience, and has brought me, that is the catalyst that got me here with you, and everyone else. And that was because of those relationships that I had known Ron for years. And that was just that was a relationship thing, pure and simple, so yeah, and yeah, I mean, the rest is, I could go on and on. I mean, I've had ups, I've had some very bad downs, but in the end, it all comes back to, you continue building those relationships. You continue to build yourself, whether it's through training, whether it's through anything. You just don't stop. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is they get comfortable.
Yeah.
And then something happens where you get laid off, you get furloughed, whatever the case may be. Suddenly you've got no backup. And DJ, I love to compare to Exchange administrators. Yes, they are still out there, but they're extraordinarily rare now with Office 365 and all that good stuff. I'd sat in on meetings, as I'm sure you have, with a tech that's going to the wayside, the writing's on the wall, but these administrators would fight tooth and nail that it has to be on-prem, it has to be this, and they got let go. And they didn't have any other skills really developed to be able to say, all right, let me, try to find a job maybe over here doing this that I'm minimally at least familiar with, to be able to get going. And that's why I push people, to me, the cloud, you got to have cloud skills, whether it's relevant now or in the future. Start taking the opportunities to learn what you can for it, because it's just becoming more and more important, and it's gaining more and more steam. And I think especially in EUC, with what we're seeing today with the coronavirus and all that, this work from home, it'll jump and surprise you. That's how this stuff works.
Truly. Yeah. So, I
So
mean,
yeah.
yeah, that's a good, actually, let's go ahead and transition that to the kind of a next segment here. I know we're kind of at an hour, but this is fun. We can just keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah,
We
no,
almost,
that's it's not
almost
like
run
just
out,
sitting here,
but
just what do we say next?
so yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things we could talk about, and this being kind of the first stream, not kind of this is the first time we've done
It's
this.
like this
So
is, yeah.
I think there's a whopping 4 people watching right now. So
Woo!
I think I'm 2 of those actually. Um, I think I'm confident that's actually true. But if someone out there has a question, you can even ask it after the fact, and I think we'll get notified of that. And definitely for the next time we're doing this live, uh, if you hit that subscribe button, there's a little bell icon that's right next to it, and that'll actually notify you the next time we're live. But we'll try and get better about pumping us up on Twitter and things like that. And largely, we just wanted to see how well this is going to work and try it out. So it's kind of
Yeah,
cool. So
absolutely. Thank you, everybody. And I promise I won't look all sweaty for next time as I was rushing to get my setup complete so we could do this.
yeah, and actually, and I'm still obviously working out some stuff with the green screen too. I thought I had it balanced out from yesterday, but I'm trying some new lighting as like big studio lighting that I thought was going to help. It's actually made it worse. I don't know how that works, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
One of these times we'll probably just not do a green screen, just do a backdrop instead. So but still kind of fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh no. It's everybody starts somewhere. I can't afford a whole big fancy studio, so
Neither can I. So I just do
yep.
a smaller, not fancy studio.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I will say this, DJ. I want to say I am very jealous that you have long hair right now.
Uh-huh.
I wish I had my long hair back in the early 90s because my hair is just COVID
Yep.
perfect, right?
Yep. Yep. I've actually been giving people a lot of times like, yeah, okay, you were down on me for getting my hair long, and who's laughing now?
I regret cutting it
Actually, what I
20
should
years
probably do
ago,
is
whatever it was.
start faking those, do some fake news stuff, and actually do pictures of me like Synergy a couple years back, and now, and say it was like, you know a month later, and here's COVID hair kind of thing. But yeah, that would be disingenuous, I think, maybe. So let's talk a little bit about kind of our vision for what's next with all this. That For me, I mean, I think this is a very open field. We want to see what is going to work and what's not going to work. And so when it comes to that, from my perspective, I've got a lot of ideas and a lot of things we can do to better enable the community to grow, but also just to let people grow. And so
Yep.
I'm very curious what's going to come out of all this. I think there's a lot of things that can be done, and a lot of things that should be cut out as well. I mean, there's a lot of focus on uh, the tech skills, for example, but like you were talking about, those kind of soft skills are actually really important, and we're not talking enough about those. We're
And
not
it's
talking
not
about,
just, yeah, sorry. And it's not just, if you're doing sales engineering
yeah,
or any kind of sales, these are important skills for IT admins, consultants doing that grunt work, being able to speak and articulate and even carry on small talk is will improve anyone's career.
yes.
Absolutely.
And that's true. And then as far as a community around this, I can foresee this being something where we absolutely do go beyond just enablement and training, and it's where this starts to be its own ecosystem. I would love to see that. I would love
Mm-hmm.
to um, be that. So this morning, just before I was waking up, something came to my mind as far as um, what what do I want out of this? And I think there's people that are comfortable with various levels of engagement. So I wanted to go through these real quick and just let people know that I am perfectly comfortable with you being at any of these levels. It is okay. So the first level is consumer. This is where you're just watching. or reading or whatever it is. And you know what? That's fine. That's the majority of the population. And I want you to know that it's okay to just be somebody who's a consumer of this stuff. It's okay. Whether you take it to action or not, or you learn anything from it, that's also optional. And I'll say again, it's okay. You know, whatever works for you. The second level is a supporter, and I'll be honest, these are the ones that I want kind of to see the most right now. These are the people that click like. These are the people that subscribe. These are the people that just have a kind of a one-to-one relationship. Whether we're aware of you personally or not doesn't really matter. It's the fact that you're a supporter, and that's what helps these kind of platforms grow at their core is that those kind of supporters. And so we want to do stuff that you like, that you're inspired to hit that like button, and you're inspired to subscribe and click the bell to always be notified when we're going live and things like that. We want that, you know. So the third level is a promoter. And this is something that I feel is really earned, not granted. You know, there, in other words, we want you to be the people that are sharing, that are submitting reviews, even to a degree that means adding comments and things like that to a video that are supportive and things like that, or even critical in a constructive kind of a way. We're fine with that too. You know, like DJ, your background's stupid. You know, you shouldn't do that anymore. You know, go ahead. You know, that's I'll take the feedback. But you know, whatever it is, as long as it's constructive, I think is what I would say as a promoter. But we really need people to share the message. I mean, we don't have sponsors to do any of this stuff, not yet. We might in the future, who knows? But for now, this is all going to be ground root. You know, was it ground roots? Is that the right word?
Grassroots.
Yeah.
Grassroots.
Grassroots. Thank you. And so we're going to need people to be sharing what we're doing here, and that's going to be important. The fourth level is what I call a producer, and that's where you're actually participating and making the content. Now, Jeff and I are collaborating on this, and this is real time. We didn't have an agenda going into this necessarily. I took some quick notes in this little program we're using called Be Live, and that's where that little text prompt comes from. As a quick little agenda that I created, and I didn't even share this with Jeff, but some other things that we're going to do that's much more organized. And so we're going to be looking for additional collaborators, people that are actually going to be producers with us to make additional content. And then there's two other levels that are either where we're at or where we want people to be eventually. The fifth level is a teacher, people that are actually, you know, doing the teaching part of this, where they're whether it's skill sets or other things that other people are talking about, you know, teaching people about that. And then the final one is a mentor, and that's the final level of what we want to see, where you are doing all of these things and enabling and inspiring other people to do the same. So as somebody who's been focused as a coach for the last few years, I see the value in mentors that I have, and mentors being one as well. And so we want to inspire more and more of those kind of people, because well, yeah, I was having a conversation with I think it was Joe Nord or something like that last year, and the observation was that we're all old. Actually, I think in his defense, I think he was looking at me saying, you know, what are you going to do? We're all old. And I'm like, dude, I'm like your age. You know, I appreciate the compliment and all, but you know, I'm just as fatigued. I've been at this for more than 20 years. It's exhausting, I know. And so I'm wanting to inspire the next. And so what I want to do is build people up through that process of more and more and more engagement, to the point where we're building up mentors that are going to be able to do this with us and maybe even take over for it. So that is big vision stuff. So that's where I'm at. Jeff, what do you think of that?
Well, I think that's great. Like you said, in regards to this, you know, it's going to be an experimentation over time before you know, if we ever settle on a definitive final format, you know, I mean, it's just going to grow, you know, and we'll take what works, we'll take what doesn't work, you know, and we'll adjust on the fly. But I do love those levels, and the mentoring, that to me is where, yeah, I'd love to see more people involved. You've been through it, I've been through it, that if it wasn't for certain people that, helped us along in our career, gave us that opportunity, I look at Ron all the time as,
Mhm.
again, if it wasn't for him and what he's taught me, um, I probably wouldn't even be, well, I know I wouldn't even be doing this right now. So it's extraordinarily important. And even if you don't get up to the mentors, that type of mentality, the great thing I think that I hope people glean from all of what you and I have been saying is that contributing to the community or a community, whatever it is you're doing, doesn't have to be EUC, it could be anything, but that's where the relationships come into play. That's where we are all learning, because none of us that you see in this community did it alone. Maybe, yeah, I guess older folks, because the technology was young. We didn't have Google, we didn't have all this other stuff. But in the end, even today, we are still learning. And if it wasn't for everybody in the community, putting things out there, none of us would be doing as well as we are, from that perspective. So even just contributing, even just a little bit, is absolutely huge, to for other people to take advantage of, because I'll guarantee that pretty much everybody has taken advantage of the information that's out there.
Yeah.
So so absolutely.
And
I'm
and
looking forward
again,
to the future of this cast
yeah.
and what happens.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And that's another aspect of this too, is obviously we're not here to be dry conversation, like here's how to do stuff. It's like I've been down that road. I really want
Yeah.
to make this interesting and fun as well. And
And
so
it,
that's
and I think, like you and I talked about it, we'll talk tech. Obviously, that's what we do. But there may be times we just don't talk tech. It could be just a BS session of one kind or another. My God, if it was Trent and I on here, I mean, it'd be hockey the entire hour, and that's all there is to it. I mean, hockey is life. So yeah, it's yeah. And I think that's the great thing about it is that what we're trying to do is it's not just single focused on one subject. Because obviously I'm a hockey fan. I think there's a lot of analogies that I'll be bringing in that have to relate to hockey, and just to try to make things clear or whatever. And who knows where that takes us?
exactly.
Anything. So.
And obviously I have the screen up so you can't see what's behind me, but just behind the screen is the guitars that people ask me about all the time. And Jeff, I remember saying this to you a couple of weeks ago, is that it's important for us to relate with who we are, not who we want to project ourselves as. And
Right.
so if we're passionate about hockey, we need to be passionate about hockey and all these kind of things. If I'm passionate about music, I need to bring that into my world as well.
Yep.
Actually, it's kind of funny. I can't name the client. I think that would be probably not appropriate, but there was a client that I went to fairly recently, like within the last year and a half or so, and I just loved being there because they had guitars on the walls, and they were a company that there's a financial services company. Uh, Again, I don't want to reveal too much. This is be kind of obvious, but they were a financial services company, and they had guitars on the walls and all the conference rooms and everything like that. I was in hog heaven. I really genuinely didn't want to leave that place. I wanted to come back as often as
Yeah.
I could. I remember during one of the breaks, asking, "Hey, is it okay if I just pick one?" Is it like one of those double neck guitars that Jimmy Page is always famous for, the
Yep.
double neck Gibsons. You know, they had one of those hanging up on the wall with some Led Zeppelin memorabilia on there as well. So
Nice.
I was like, are people allowed to play these? And they're like, sure. So I picked it up, started. It was severely out of tune. The strings were just not possible to get in tune. But I was like, it felt fun to just be at work or
Oh,
during a break, obviously. But they're in that way. But I was able to bring in my passions with my work, and to be honest with you, that's why I'm doing all this. That's totally my motivation here, is that I really genuinely enjoy, you know, being in a relationship with people and inspiring them and doing all these things. That's
and I
I'm
think you and I are in the same spot in our careers. I mean, obviously, we're getting older, and we've had those mentors that have helped us. We want to help other people in try to pass along what we've learned, in the hopes that people do learn, and maybe avoid some of the mistakes that we've made in the past. But it could, it's just it is about helping people, and
yeah
and hopefully they will get something out of all of this, and be able to expand their careers in some way, or even personal life.
yeah yeah. And again, that's another aspect of this, that we can't truly disconnect our personal lives. I mean, we we do this when we're at the offices that we serve in, or if we're in a cubicle farm or whatever our capacity is. We bring a level of our personal lives into our work life. We do
Hmm.
this naturally. And
Yep.
so for us to be in denial about that is unhealthy, frankly.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that you need to be bringing your drama into the office. I'm not saying that. The, yeah, but at the same time, letting people into your life and letting them know your interests and things like that. We
Yep.
do this naturally. We're social creatures. We're this is the way we're built, right? So to try and deny that means you're only living half a life and you're just doing a job. And again, I go right back to the concept of this whole channel, that we want to thrive, not survive. It's like, it
Yep.
really is cheesy sounding, but it really resonates with me. Is it's like, I don't want people to just go do a job and go home. And yeah, it's just I've never seen anybody advance the way they want to with that. Now, there are some people out there that they're perfectly happy to do that, to just say, okay, I'm just gonna do my job and come home,
Right.
because then I'm not worried about my job when I do come home. I think that's valid. But at the same time, if you want to grow your career and make it meaningful in that way, then you pretty much have to do more than just the just the work. You have to have other things, like Jeff was saying. You have to be willing to serve and build relationships, and you're not going to be able to do that by being inauthentic or trying to project some kind of false image
Yeah.
of yourself. Now, I'm having a Bill Cosby moment. I know it's not popular to say anymore, but he had a routine a while ago that somebody was asking him, or just saying that they love doing cocaine or whatever, and it's like, because it enhances your personality. And he says, "Well, yes, but what if you're an asshole?" Sorry, maybe probably not appropriate, but I didn't want
Hey, truth is truth, right?
but let's be honest here. If you are in an office scenario, you're working with other people, and your personality is that you're just a jerk, yeah, okay, I can see us needing to work on that a little bit and maybe projecting a better part of yourself. But I think at our core, everyone has it within them to be a good person. I believe this with every part of me. You're talking a lot more about that in my life, actually. That I believe we're all wired to, at some level, want to leave this world a better place. And so, even people that are, you know, jerks, sometimes they are that way because they think it's going to get them somewhere. They think
Hmm.
that that's the way forward. And I'm here to tell you that that whole thing of last guys finish last is not necessarily true. Um, that in fact, somebody in my community today, I was asking what kind of questions that they would want to ask for people that are experts in the technology and well known in the field. And the gist of what his question was how do you find the time to do this kind of stuff? And I haven't typed out the answer to this, and I think maybe I'll let you answer on this as well, Jeff. But the way I would answer that is by making it a practice. It's not about finding the time; it's about wanting to do it. And if you want to do something, you'll find the time for it. And there's
Yeah.
different ways to show up and various ways to do that. But I look at all these guys that spend like lots and lots of hours. Like you were saying before, like the early days of the Citrix forums and whatnot. The people that were really contributing a lot. There might have been some motivations for like if I can contribute more, I can get the brain. Got to get the
Yeah.
brain. But genuinely, though, at its core, there's a willingness to want to help, and that you want people to be not only excited about what you're excited about, but want to see them grow and want to see them thrive. And so I think that really is it. It's not just about finding the time to do it. I mean, time is easy. It's really the priority.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I've, it can be tough, but it's not something that you do need to do every day. It's not something, I mean, there are going to be times where, yeah, you just don't have the time, but it's kind of like exercise, right? Everybody's got an excuse not to exercise. And this is the same type of thing. You can find an excuse not to hop on and answer a question in the forum or whatever the case may be. But just like the exercise and things like that, it's in the long run, it is well worth the investment, no matter how small the investment may be. Just getting yourself out there is really, is beautiful. It does help.
And everybody has something to contribute.
Yeah.
Even small things matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just tell your
You may think everybody knows about this little tweak, but in effect, nobody really does.
That too. And I think, and this is something that I encourage my community with as often as I think to do it, and just to poke them a little bit to share their stories. It's just like, especially right now, there's so much need for people to be, well, again, I'm just going to keep being cheesy until I get like penalized by the government for being cheesy, but whatever. But we need,
is it government cheese though?
We do. We need people that are going to be stepping up and making things work. So I'm hearing stories in my community of people that had one this morning was having 100 users working remotely, and then within a month or just a few weeks, all of a sudden it's 1,200 users working remotely. How do you do that? That's well beyond just the normal. So it's important for us to be able to tell our stories and celebrate each other's wins, even if they're small things like that. To us, that seems small, but to the 1,100 people that are now working remotely, they couldn't before, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, from if you're just looking at numbers, but think about that for a second. You had 100 people working remotely. So you were scaled for maybe a little over 100 people. Suddenly you have to have 10 times the infrastructure to handle 1,200 people. I don't care how big or small you are. That is a huge percentage change.
Yeah.
For any, it doesn't matter if you're big, small, enterprise, whatever. That's a huge change, no matter what it is. And that's experience, whether it went right, whether it went wrong, or you're still working on it. That's experience that other people could be looking for, some advice or, whatever, because, this did take everybody's by surprise. And I do truly believe that for all the people that have said they were prepared, I don't necessarily think there is, because let's be honest, everybody talks disaster recovery.
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to putting the money into disaster recovery, companies don't like that, because that's resources just sitting idle doing nothing.
Sure.
So I don't think as many companies as we would like to think we're prepared for something like this. We're
Mhm.
actually prepared.
And those that
So
were already flexing to the cloud in ways that were meaningful and useful, those people are doing better now because they don't have
you
that
know,
drama. They were just able to scale.
well,
But
and but even if they weren't in the cloud,
yeah,
whether they are or aren't, doesn't necessarily mean that they were ready for this type of expansion.
yeah,
Expanding another 20% is one thing. Expanding 1,000%,
yeah,
that's totally. I don't care if you're cloud or not. That's an undertaking. One way or the other. And I've been through a number of DR, practice scenarios. No one's ever truly 100% prepared for something like this. And this is, we always talk about outages, right? Oh, data
yeah,
center A goes down, we'll just move over to data center B. This is in that same vein, but also very, very different in that we're not talking about just having, oh, lights off here, lights on over here, same for same. It's not what this is. This is very different in that you need to have the capability to expand what's already there. So yeah, this is a huge moment. Um, like we talked about right in the very beginning, this is a huge moment for end user computing, and hopefully it continues down a good path. That companies are learning. Maybe it's not so bad having people work from home, those types of things.
yeah,
Because there's a lot of money savings if you want to get into the financial aspects of it. A company can save a boatload of money not having somebody come into the office every day.
yeah. It's true. I mean, and that's something we saw after bird flu. Was a
Yep.
huge jump in that sort of thing. Saw it again in let's say around 2010, 2011. So another big jump from people working from home and
You know,
being
but
more efficient.
nothing like this. Nothing
No, no. Like you
like this.
said, I think at some level we can't really ever say we were fully prepared, but I do believe to counterpoint what you're saying, I do believe that. Well, I say this all the time because I mean it. It's that we won't rise to the occasion. We'll only rise to our level of preparedness. So, in
Yep.
the same degree, we weren't ready for the scale of this. We weren't ready for as many, but we were more. Those people that were already working on the not just the mental skill sets or the technical skill sets, but just the business acumen to understand why this was important.
Yeah.
Those are the people that pivoted rapidly and were
Yes.
able to adapt and fully. I mean, I'm actually pretty proud of some companies that I've worked around or some environments. I got some emails from people that said, you know what, um, thanks to what you did with us last year, we were able to just spin up some other additional servers, and everybody's working from home now. We're fine. We're absolutely
Yeah.
fine. We don't,
That's great.
you know,
Yeah, that's
it's a weird
great.
email to get to say, hey, I just want to let you know we don't need your help. You know,
Yeah. Did
but it
they
was
send a
really
check anyway? Is that
yeah,
what?
but it was great that I was able to take a system that was um, not healthy and bring it to that level of health on a way that they could scale.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a big environment, but that doesn't matter. That's the thing about this technology. When it comes to end user computing, it
Hmm.
really is not about the size with the scale, which is we think that's the same thing, but it's not. Um, it's really important to know that, but it all is really your mindset is truly important too. Um, it's kind of funny. I made a video on this on my other channel, on the Citrix Professionals channel for the Citrix Coach in a Car, getting coffee or going to the chiropractor. Longest title ever. I love it. Um, but it was that, look, if you're an end user computing right now, you're on the front lines. You are suddenly the most important people in the entire IT department. Truly. I mean, you've just become the guys. I mean, or the gals, or whatever. It's like you're the heroes now
Yep.
because you were prepared. Now, if you weren't prepared, that's another story, and it's in a lot of ways almost. I'd say it's too late, but let's be honest here. Just like with bird flu, just like the what happened with all the winter storms in 2010. I just remembered that's what that impetus was. Is all those winter storms are going across the United States and caused
Mhm.
a huge spike in citrus licenses and stuff like that. But it's things like that that really cause a longer term need, and so you're going to be needed, and it's not going to go away.
And I think this is also a test for just people in general. If you're doing EUC, maybe you weren't prepared, but this is also the occasion for you to rise to
Yes.
and be that hero. Just because you're not prepared for something like this isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you can rise to the challenge and get what needs to be done accomplished.
Yeah.
It's because, again, I do truly believe most organizations, there's no way they could have predicted something like this. I mean, I'm sure somebody predicted it, obviously, but that
Hmm.
the reality is the human mind can't comprehend 30 million people on unemployment, businesses shut down, all my workers working from home. I mean,
Yeah.
that's mind boggling, even as we're living in it through this, So, there's more than one way, I guess, to be the hero. And, one is, yeah, you were prepared. You just expanded. Boom, you're done. You're going home. The other is, you know what? You weren't ready, but you grabbed the bull by the horns and you ran with it. There's just so many ways of being that hero to
Yeah.
the company. And hopefully what comes out of this is more people working from home. Because what are the numbers? It's like
Oh,
Citrix EUC is what, typically 10-15% penetration in a company.
yeah.
So
And
now you're
and
jumping 80%, 85%.
and it largely depends on the company, obviously, but if there's any kind of task worker, any kind of uh, even knowledge workers from that perspective that
Mhm.
are now all remote, and so if your technology is able to adapt in any kind of way to that, then your numbers are up.
Yep.
Same thing with like Zoom and technologies like that are all about conferencing. They saw just immediate spike,
Oh yeah.
and so it's an interesting picture for a lot of companies in how they work
Yeah.
now being changed by the method by which it's delivered, which is different. That's something else that I brought up yesterday, is that we can't keep thinking of this in the same kind of way. This is not. I can't I can't give the same level of optimizations and all the kind of things that I want you to be thinking about when it comes to like supporting work from home. The priorities need to shift a little bit. We need to be able to work differently and
Yep.
be able to support this. And this is absolutely true. Um, End user computing, and I don't care how good your protocol is. When it comes to doing like a conference call, video conference call, there you can't beat the speed of light problem when it comes down to that. That's a lot of data that has to go back and forth in real time. And
Yep.
so if you're funneling that through a delivered desktop or application, there's going to be problems trying to do that no matter what. It literally does not matter. And so we're having to now adapt the technologies rapidly to actually accommodate this in ways that weren't done before. Usually it was just collaboration kind of things.
Yep.
But now tools like WebEx and things like that are actually um, starting to look at what they can do to say, okay, how do we offload this? How do we make it so that the um, the connection can be offloaded so it's rendered locally, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
So we've got things that are developing right now that are in response to this, but we need to know about these things too. We need to be a community, and I'm talking all IT people. I'm not just talking end user computing at this point. We all
Yep.
need to be doing things that are bringing awareness and that sort of thing. But we
Yeah.
can't do that if we're not listening. If we're not listening to what users are needing, and we're not kind of putting ourselves in their shoes and saying, okay, well, I understand this stuff. What is it like for someone who is in a panic right now, that is wondering if they're going to have a job tomorrow, and they're
Yep.
asked to work from home, and all they have is this tiny little laptop, and kids are in the background all day, and there's all this. Put yourself in their shoes and say, what would I want out of this if I was in that? Getting on a soapbox here is probably better for another time when we're not well over an hour in.
Holy cow. We're hitting 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, look at that. Yeah, that is hour and 40
We should
minutes.
probably wrap it up. We're not going to have anything to talk about
Next time. Yeah. Actually, so I have a coaching call coming up, so I got to do that anyway. So yeah, cool. So yeah, let's do that for next time. We'll just say next time talk about some other stuff. So I'm going to put some things in the comments here. We're thinking about, would you like to see a podcast? What topics would you like to see us discuss?
One thing I do want to say before we leave is, those guys in the trenches doing the implementations, you guys are the true heroes in all this, not us, because we're sitting here talking through a video and everything else. You guys are the ones that are, the rubber meets the road. You guys are doing this. And the other thing is that I do want to say is thank you to all those companies that are donating, whether it's free licenses, whether it's, all this free stuff, whether it's Microsoft, Citrix, VMware. I've seen TechSmith, Camtasia, and Snagit. There's a lot of companies out there that have stepped up to help other people, where they're not making the money they normally would. Granted, a lot of it's temporary, has to be, but they don't have to. They could try to take advantage, and there's a lot of companies that aren't. And I just want to say kudos to them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, there's a profiting from and profiting during. And then there's a combination of that where we say, there's certain things that, well, like I was saying earlier, loyalty being earned.
Yes.
It's not something where it's just, granted, it's kind of important. So, yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I would echo that it's really important to be doing that. And that's why, it's always a challenge. I'll bring myself back up here. It's always a challenge to know what the line is, and to understand where we need to be. But I will say from a perspective of someone who is extremely active. I mean, I'm gonna need a break here sometime soon, I'm sure. But I've been going like gangbusters for these last few weeks. I don't think I've ever had this much activity on various channels and everything I'm doing. But again, this is what I'm taking on as my kind of life mission, but also my career. This is what I'm going to be doing more of. I'm doing less consulting and more of this kind of stuff, and so it becomes this weird kind of dynamic for me of saying, well, does that mean I should just be giving away everything for free? And if so, what does that look like from a survivability standpoint? And so I'm like,
well, the one thing I've learned working in sales is if you give something away for free or you cut the price down to the bone, people don't respect it. So like from a sales perspective, a product perspective, it's a lot easier to replace something that costs $1.50 a user than it is for something that costs, the real price of $15 to $20 a user or something like that.
Yeah.
So, not that I'm saying we charge, for nickel and dime everything.
Right.
But what is going to end up happening is it's going to be quality information being passed along, quality, whether it's classes, videos, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's important. So I think in kind of closing, what I'll say is that we'll just keep doing whatever is necessary, and you never know what's going to happen. I mean, with all this, I mean, there might be things we can do that we discover in the midst of this. And
mhm.
the example I'll give is that right before all the lockdowns happened, um, it was actually before I published the book, before any of this. It was a conversation that I can't remember if you were. I don't think you were part of that conversation directly, but it was actually at iGel Disrupt, and we were talking about the fact that a lot of people can't get to conferences and stuff like that. They can't do these things. They can't get into uh, courses. Have gotten crazy. They're like $5,000 or more just to go for
Yeah,
a week-long course. It's becoming prohibitive for somebody that doesn't have kind of that sponsor, like a company that is investing back into them directly.
yeah,
It's becoming impossible for people to do this, and they're denied the ability to go to conferences, or they're sent on their own dime if they do, and they have to take time off to do it. This is like this ridiculous kind of thing where it's like, how are you going to grow as someone in the community or just as a technology professional if you're not engaging? Like we were talking about earlier, it takes a lot these days. And
yeah,
so what I came to the conclusion of is like, okay, I want to set a certain percentage of everything I do and say, okay, that goes into a fund that helps people with that sort of thing, with other things as well. Right now, my focus is more on um, people that are, well, specifically here in the Nashville area. Tornado hit,
oh yeah,
and next week we were on lockdown. It was it's crazy.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so those people are seriously hurting right now, and so giving 30% of like book royalties and things like that is a small thing, but it's meaningful for me to be able to say, you know what, people are able to participate in that. This is something where they can contribute as well. So I'm looking for other opportunities like that too, because honestly, let's be perfectly blunt here. Book royalties aren't really all that much. I think I might break $500 here soon. It's like just it's not very profitable. It's
So
a
you're
fairly
not
good
like the
location.
next J.K. Rowling's or something? Is that what you're
No, no, this is not selling in the millions right now.
saying?
It's doing fine and I love it, but it's not about that. So there's some other things that I'm going to be doing here soon that are focused around that. But it's able to support me, but it's able to support a community too. So once Nashville's back on its feet, I feel like that's good. That fund will start going towards things like scholarships, where you know getting people to some of my programs that wouldn't be able to afford it previously, or being able to be sent to in-person conferences once we're doing those again, that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
I think there's ways we can kind of uh, invest back as well. And so that's something that
absolutely.
I'm definitely excited to work through as
Yep.
well. And it's kind of the other cool thing about our world right now is that we're not focused in on everything being a uh, charitable or not charitable. The lines are kind of blurring here, and so that's fun too. So anyway, yeah, we hope you guys have enjoyed this, and we will keep doing it until somebody demands that we stop. So
I agree.
cool.
All
So
right,
yeah,
DJ, this has been great. Having fun on this first one. Can't wait till
yeah, the
next week.
technology worked, and it stayed going for almost
Woo!
2 hours. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Fun. We will. There's a technology I'll be introducing for folks in the next few weeks, I hope, that will allow you to search for keywords and things like that. And it'll actually find the place in the video. So we don't want you to feel like you have to, if it's a 2 hour conversation like this, we don't want you to have to feel like you have to listen to the whole thing. If you have something you want to find, there'll be technology to let you do that. But thanks for hanging out with us, whether you're live or after the fact. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yes.
Hit subscribe and get notified.
Do I need to wear the tights and the?
Please no. All right, Jeff. Thanks again, and
Yeah, thank you.
We will see you next week.
All right, sounds good.
Cheers.
Cheers.